Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And this is NFGeeks.
NFGeeks.
All right, Nick, we're going to continue our discussion about the impact of inferior functions.
Cool.
Because there's really a lot to say about it and what can be done about it and what people think you can do about it. So, all right, so why don't you start us off again?
So I think in the first video we talked more about kind of the negative aspects of it. Like I said, when I go into like SE mode, I almost turn into like a wannabe ESTP, and I get, overly into things like sports, competition, but in more of a an ESTP way. Sometimes I'll get like overly concerned about my physical appearance, and I'll try to work out or the way I dress or whatever. Like I get overly focused on that kind of thing. So I mean those are the negative things that I was trying to get across in the other one, the first part of this. But I think the thing that people can benefit from at least my theory that the inferior function is your second most powerful function. Like I said, I'm not saying that the inferior function is your second most
competent. We're talking about impact, how it impacts.
Yeah, I think it's probably the second most driving that it's the flip side of your dominant function. So where someone could benefit from, say in my case, introverted intuition is my strongest function. It's the thing I'm most competent at. That's what dominates my personality primarily. Its functional peer would be extroverted sensing. And what I found with extroverted sensing compared to introverted intuition, when it works well for me, is the kinds of NI insights that I draw cannot be drawn, from my perspective, unless I experience something. And if it doesn't happen unless I experience something that's of more of an extroverted sensing nature. So for instance,
because you don't have that. That's very fascinating.
Exactly.
Because you don't have that in your own intuition. Your intuition is introverted.
Exactly.
So you don't have that empirical thing going on. Whereas mine's extroverted, so my intuition is giving me the external world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get that.
So in my situation, I don't get any insights unless I'm constantly mulling over the same insights over and over again. But I don't get any insights until I experience things, and then I get the insight. The kind of introverted intuition type insights that I get came about because I did something, I experienced something. It's all tangible information that's coming in through SE, and then it goes right up to introverted intuition and provides me the kind of conclusions I come up with, the foresight, kind of whatever I want to do in the future comes from understanding and trying to come up with meaning out of whatever I did experience.
All right, so this kind of relates though to the other video we were doing. Doesn't that show though that really your NFness is compensating? It's using your inferior function, but really if anything good is coming out of the inferior functions, because the NF part of you, which is more competent, is sort of compensating for it, going around it,
Pretty much.
Because when you don't, because is this true? When you don't apply your NF stuff, does the SE go off the charts into an ESTP?
That's okay. Yeah, this is probably something I wasn't understanding about myself in the first video that we made. I was like, okay.
So we've already had transcendence.
Okay.
From one video to the other.
I just had one of those little aha moments where I was like, okay. So a thought just came to me when you were saying that, and it was SE. So if you look at the function order of an INFJ, for instance, NI, FE, TI, SE, I feel like the kind of stuff, the NF kind of stuff that I want to do is then it almost has to go through those top three things first, and then it's like SE is the ultimate goal of what my intuition wants, what my feeling wants. Then the thinking kind of tries to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like SE is the ultimate goal. Where it goes wrong is, you're right, when the NF part of me just is not part of it anymore, then it's like I just flip like upside down and go into ESTP mode and, start to just be like that.
Yeah, I'd like to think this could be a total rationalization, but I'd like to think that my fascist draconian ways on the forum have an NF niceness to it. Like, I'm not banning people because randomly, it's because you're hurting people's feelings. I feel like that there's at least some sort of NF value going on. I mean, I realize that's sort of a rationalization.
Well, I mean, as an ENFP, does it work for you like this? Do you come up with a lot of ideas, and are you always trying to perceive abstract things as a way to move towards an SI type thing? Like, for instance, does your NE ultimately do things so that its ultimate goal will be to find kind of stability, dependability, things that SI would kind of describe?
Sure. It's trying to it's trying to I always think though in a compensating way, that it's trying to compensate for the SI, not so much compensate, but trying to control the impact of SI. You know what I mean? So I guess the goal would be some sort of order, but an order that's coming from some higher ideal.
Okay.
I suppose, because my SI would be related to sort of an SJ kind of thing,
Yeah.
Which is funny. I wish Noah was here, because that means that Noah's thing is NE, and NE is introverted, extroverted intuition is the thing that's impacting him, the way that we're talking, and I don't know how that would manifest in his mind, because his extroverted intuition is horrible, horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Terrible. I mean, I realize that's just true of all ISTJs, but
you know what? It's like
it's particularly horrible in this case.
Another theory that I've kind of had to myself is SE, and I've heard this before, but then I kind of ran with it myself. Is for me, if my inferior function is SE, is that more of like a relief function? So when I'm burnt out on NI, FE and TI, do I go to SE as okay, it's time to just let loose and go nuts? Because that, like I said, I wouldn't say at its worst, but in that 10% of the time that my SE is all on, it's all on. It's like an on-off switch.
Well,
and is that because I'm kind of exhausted from using the top functions? And to me, I think yes. I think that I kind of go into SE mode when I'm just looking to let loose, and when it comes out, it comes out in a big way.
Yeah, I find this may be a loose connection, but because I was talking about this yesterday, ENFPs sometimes hold grudges, and I think the holding of grudges is SI gone awry. Because if you're holding a grudge, you're making a scorecard. You know what I mean? If you have a grudge against somebody, that's because you have a scorecard on them and you've checked off some boxes. Yeah. It's like a little golf card, and that's an SI. Okay. Keeping track of all the injustices and all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it might be manifesting in that way, because SJs have scorecards.
Interesting.
Very vast ones.
Yeah. Huh.
Like Microsoft Excel. Scorecards. I'm more like old school, right? Keeping notes.
Yeah.
So maybe it manifests that way. So when my SI is off in running, it's collecting data, scanning. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a paranoid way.
I see. Okay.
When I get nervous on the forum, I believe me, sometimes I feel like this is where the inferior thing's coming out. I feel like I have to read every comment. Like sometimes something's going on, something bad's happening, I'm missing it, I gotta read every comment. Don't think about any comments.
And this might just be dominant, and I'm just looking for the relevant information.
Yeah. Well, I'm worried about, again, somebody getting hurt. I'm not up on it, someone's going to start being upset, so I better read every single one and
Okay.
keep track of all the people on my shit list and make sure that they're, I get into this fascist place about it.
Yeah, see, that's funny. Because sometimes when I'm not so much on the forum, but when I'm stressed out, I think one of the top things that I'm trying to do is like trying to look cool or something. Like I said, like
yeah, that's very SC. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Like I said, it comes out sometimes. If I'm going into an uncomfortable situation, or I find myself into an uncomfortable situation, like I always try to make sure I'm looking good, which I always end up looking like a dork.
No.
The more I try to look good, I just look more like not good. Just things I try to say. Like if I'm trying to come up with like some funny little thing on the spot, I just sound stupid. A lot of times.
This idea of impact, where do you see it in others and other types? So you've talked about your SC, and I've talked about SI. Where are some other types? Because that'd be interesting to think about then. How is it impacting them? Because I don't know how NE is. I'm thinking of Noah. I don't know. NE must be impacting him in the same way, and somehow he must be using his SJ to support it. But I don't know. I have to run this all by him. So are there other versions of this?
Okay. ISFJ and ISTJ. So say Noah and ISFJs. What I notice is sometimes they have a tendency to worry a lot.
Oh yeah, by God, their anxiety is through the roof.
I got a feeling what that is, or could be, is their inferior NE generating every possible bad thing that could happen.
Theoretically,
yeah.
Right.
Stuff that is not actually happening, and that kind of then goes into their dominant SI, and they say to themselves, I gotta protect myself, I gotta make sure that everything...
Oh, that's I can see that. In other words, theoretically, they come up with all these worst case scenarios.
Exactly.
Which may not have any kind of probable thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they can't judge it because they're concrete.
Whereas you, with a healthy dominant NE, is kind of seeing it with a little bit more, like what's really most likely to happen, or I don't know.
Well, it worries them because it's weak. Not weak, but it's coming from. It's not. The NE is not a strong point for them, right? It's not definitive. It's unconscious. It's pain. It's part of themselves that they don't like.
Yeah.
So that's what's creating the anxiety too. Just like the SI is creating anxiety with me. I must keep track of. When I'm in that mode, that's an anxiety mode. It's not a calm mode.
Something that I see with INTPs, with inferior extroverted feeling, is that sometimes, like I have a couple friends that are INTPs that I always see this with them. It's either when they're stressed out or when they're just not quite feeling right in a situation, it'll be this like really weird expression of extroverted feeling. It's like not as controlled. It's kind of like all over the place. It can come out in kind of just the way they speak, the way they try to connect with people. It can be a little weird. And another thing I notice, like with those types, is that sometimes their FE can, cause them to want to be like super popular or whatever, and it just gets funky. And in turn, it almost makes them look more dorky and nerdy.
No, that's right. And I also find when they're really stressed, when the FE is not so strong, you experience the 3 S's. I call this is my new theory, the 3 S's. Sarcasm, snarkiness, and sardonic. But sardonic not in a funny way. Sardonic wit, but in a bad way. But yeah, the sarcasm and the snarkiness comes out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
they're frustrated about something, and that's what's being expressed.
Yeah.
In this sort of bad emotional, way.
Yeah, and
I think that's true of anybody who has a weak FE.
Yeah. No, totally. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is it always comes out in kind of a like weird, awkward way. You're just like, ooh. Whereas say somebody with extroverted feeling high up, it's a little bit more controlled, and I think that's